I want to welcome everybody to this morning's committee hearing. For those of you that we haven't seen since the holidays, we say Happy New Year, and it's good to be back and good to see you. We have several items on the agenda today. What I hope to do is take up non-controversial items so that we can move into the more substantive items. I'm joined today by my colleague Tony Cardenas, and I thought I saw Ann and Jan Perry. So, Mr. City Attorney, that means we're legal, right? Yes, sir. So let's rock and roll. Ms. Barclay, why don't you read item 1? I think we're going to try to do items 1 through 14. I don't think that they're controversial. We might be able to run through those items. We might be. So item 1.
Meg Barclay, CLA. Item 1 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to the acquisition of real property at 110 South Boyle Avenue.
Okay. Mr. Cardenas?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment. According to the documentation from the department, this is a very important fund, and it's doing some good things, and what it's going to be used for in CD14 seems to be a good project, et cetera. But I just want to state for the record that so far the funds that have been committed from this $15+ million fund, land acquisition fund, are none of them so far are in the San Fernando Valley. But fortunately, there's at least one project that potentially is being considered for funding, and yet the fund is down from $15.5 million to uncommitted, getting down to the $2-3 million range. So I just want to state for the record, nothing against CD14. I will be voting for it. It is a good project in accordance with what the fund is for. But once again, the Valley seems to be not having taken advantage of that like the rest of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas, and I'm sure Mr. Weezer would be very appreciative of your statement. Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and first of all, I want to say how happy I am that we're moving forward with the construction of the Winston apartments, because the project's going to bring 40...
I'm sorry, it's a different item.
Wait, we're on 1, right?
1.
Yes, we're on 1.
Oh, sorry. I was too excited.
Okay,
I'm still happy, though.
I recommend sure that the next item we handle is the one that Ms. Perry wants to talk about.
Excitement is a good thing, and I'm happy that you're happy. Okay.
Move the item.
I'm excited. Let's move it.
So without objection, on item 1, we'll adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 2.
Item 2 is a report from the CRA and the CLA relative to a contract to assist with plan amendments for 7 redevelopment project areas in South Los Angeles.
Okay, and item 2 will adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 3.
Item 3 is a CRA report and a report from the City Administrative Officer and a resolution relative to funds for the Department of Public Works for public improvements to St. Louis Street outside the Adelante East Side redevelopment project area.
Okay, seeing no questions or concerns on item 3, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the CLA relative to increasing the commercial facade improvement grant for 11122 Magnolia Boulevard for additional exterior improvements.
Okay, then without objection, we'll adopt the CLA report on item 4. That brings us to item 5.
Item 5 are reports from the CRA and the CAO relative to an environmental action and a pre-development and construction loan agreement with Habitat for Humanity of San Fernando and Santa Clarita Valleys Incorporated.
Okay, on item 5, we will adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 6.
Item 6 is a report from the CRA relative to its fiscal year 2008-2009 quarter 1 financial status.
Okay, on item 6, we will receive and file the CLA report. What I want to do is, Ms. Perry, I'm going to save item 7 until we complete it, and because it's my understanding that you had something to say about that. So we will put that one, Ms. Barclay, on hold. That'll move us to item 8.
Item 8 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Justin H. Saunders to the CRA Board of Commissioners.
Okay, item 8, we will receive and file the mayor's appointment. Item 9.
Item 9 are reports from the CRA and the CAO and a resolution relative to the commitment of funds and various other actions to implement the East Valley Homeownership Opportunity Program.
Okay, item 9 will adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 10.
Item 10 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to the adoption of a new redevelopment survey area 17 encompassing the community of Van Nuys.
Okay, then on item 10, we'll adopt the CLA report. Okay, just to make sure that the city clerk is still, didn't fall asleep. What item are we on now?
Number 11, sir.
Which one is that?
That would be number 11.
Is he correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then let's read item number 11. I'm proud of you.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Item 11 is a report from the CRA and the CLA and a resolution relative to various actions related to the implementation of the Mid-City Crenshaw Vision and Implementation Plan.
Okay, on item 11, we'll adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 12.
Item 12 are reports from the CRA and the CAO relative to an increase in funds to perform bond counsel services for the Angeles Plaza tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bond series.
Okay, we'll adopt the CAO report on that item. Item 13.
Item 13 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department and the CAO relative to transferring a contract to provide services under the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS program.
Okay, then on item 13, we'll adopt the CAO report. That should bring us to item 14.
Item 14 is a report from the LAHD and the CAO relative to Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982 resolution and minutes relative to the Central City Apartments, the Swansea Park Senior Apartments, Toberman Village, and Vendome Palms Apartments projects.
Okay, then on item 14, we'll adopt the CAO's report. We've just been joined by Councilmember Ed Reyes. Good morning, my friend. Ms. Barclay, if we could return to item 7. Ms. Perry, this I believe is the item that I think you might be excited about. I don't know.
No, yeah, what, for other things.
For other reasons.
Other reasons.
Okay.
Yes.
Item 7.
Yes.
Item 7 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to the recording of new covenants and the subordination of existing financing of the Panama Hotel Winston Apartments Rehabilitation Project.
Ms. Perry.
So, again, I'm so excited about the Winston Apartments because it's going to bring 40 new units of permanent supportive housing to Central City East. Now, I am concerned about recommendation number 3 within the CRA board report. The recommendation authorizes the CEO of the agency to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with SRO Housing to make referral units available to former tenants of the Alexandria Hotel on a priority basis. And I believe that an MOU of this nature would be out of compliance with fair housing laws and that it's inappropriate to include this with the overall action. Now, the CLA, or Chief Legislative Analyst report, recommends deferral of the agency recommendation to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with SRO Housing until the agency returns to council with sufficient information to justify the memorandum of understanding. So I want to say that we should support, as a committee, the Chief Legislative Analyst recommendation, and I'm just asking that we adopt the Chief Legislative Analyst report. That's it.
Done without objection. Okay. Mr. Cardenas will not be available for this vote. Okay, so Ms. Perry, the city attorney, I think, might want to help us through this here. Mr. City Attorney? Get your mic right.
Yeah. If the CLA report does not include the item that Ms. Perry is concerned about, then by adopting that report, you won't be adopting that particular recommendation from the CRA report. But you can also, to make it clearer if you wish, add as part of the committee action an express statement that that recommendation is not included in the committee action.
So why can we do it that way? That's basically what.
Okay, let me say.
Or what other?
The CLA, the Chief Legislative Analyst report, recommends deferral of that specific agency recommendation to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with SRO Housing until the agency returns to council with sufficient information to justify the memorandum of understanding. And specifically, I am referring to number 3 within the Community Redevelopment Agency board report, number 3 recommendation. So, if
that accomplishes the goal, then fine. By adopting the CLA report, that will take care of it.
Then without objection, that'll be the order. Okay, at this time, we have some public comment cards, and we have at least 2 other items. So, Mr. Clyde Williams, if you could come forward, and Chuck Tenen, you're after Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, good morning, sir.
Good morning. I hope it will be a Happy New Year.
I hope so, too.
Okay. Basically, my name is Clyde Williams. I live at 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, CD 14. I'm here representing the Southwest Museum Coalition, and we're concerned regarding the continued use of the CRA funds basically as a slush fund for either council persons and or the mayor. The basic concept of CRA was to make capital improvements. On your agenda today, there's an operations contribution. We have seen in CD 14 that Monterey Hills generates a lot of revenue, and it can be used, that revenue is being used all the way down into Boyle Heights with some allocations to El Sereno and CD 14 northern area. We've seen also that the Broadway historic development is going to have a new CRA combined joint task force for development because there's no parking there. Why is there no parking there? Because it was originally designed for transit-based population. And in the old days, before we have what we have now, we had good transit, and it was well used. Now you're going to provide more downtown parking, $4 a day for 10 hours, whereas in Broadway CD1 and CD14, we're paying $1 an hour in retail. Very few people are using it. There's a lot of car spaces now, but the CRA seems to be using the money as and where the city needs it in their existing operations now, in non-capital improvement projects. We're concerned. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Williams. Mr. Tenen, Chuck, how are you?
I'm good. On January 20th, it was a historical day for our nation. People expressed happiness and hope for change, challenge, and commitment. What about this city? Will it do its part in housing? We, the people of the city, hope that our leaders got the message. We don't need another year like 2008. And we need a change in the housing policy. The city's housing problems are growing worse because the city does not offer developers, communities, incentives. And this is the reason that we have this housing problem, and loss of more existing affordable housing is getting worse. This housing problem will not cease if we don't fix it. And the city needs a housing policy that's long overdue. When this city realizes that we desperately need more housing, affordable housing, and the need for a housing policy, things can get better. The Central City Association quoted, "We should build where we want people to live, where they could use transportation." No, people should live where they want to. And Jan Perry cries, "We need more housing." What we really need is a good housing policy. And I got to tell you, I presented something, an idea to this committee about taking up 2 spaces in parking. 100 citations were given out in 1 week in Marina del Rey. That's $5,000. If this idea was implemented and enforced throughout the city, guess what? That'd be over $100,000 a week. And parking meters, I got to say this. Again, another survey was done. East LA, $4 an hour for parking. Wow, instead of more city revenue, less. Or you know what? Maybe they should raise it to $6, and then they can put the money towards the $42 million to save Billy. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. So that completes public comment. I'd like to reconsider item 9. Mr. Cardenas would like to make a statement on that item. So without objection, we will reconsider item 9. Ms. Barclay, for the record, if you could reread item 9.
Yes, sir. Item 9 is reports from the CRA and the CAO on a resolution relative to the commitment of funds and various other actions to implement the East Valley Homeownership Opportunity Program.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify for the record, the East Valley Homeownership Program is listed as a CD7 project, but actually the project area, the CRA project area, before redistricting was called the CD7 project area, but since the last redistricting, it is fully within my district, CD6 and CD7. So our notes show, for internal purposes, not the body of the language, but internal purposes, it's flagged as a CD7 implementation project, but actually it's CD6 and CD7. Again, in the body language and the technical language, it does stipulate that this is for purchases of property in council districts CD6 and CD7. It's a great program. Matter of fact, Council Member Alarcon, who's the representative for Council District 7, him and I and our staffs have been working very closely to make sure that the final product is most beneficial to both of our constituencies. And I just wanted to state that for the record. Again, nothing on the technical language, but just wanted to state for the record, it was labeled as a CD7. It is, but it's also CD6. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. So on item 9, without objection, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to, in fact, I think I want to, maybe we should, instead of doing item 15, why don't we just go in and do item 16 now? Because I've got cards from the public on item 16, and I want to afford those individuals an opportunity to speak. So this is what we will do, is I will take public comment now. After Ms. Barclay, you read the item, and then we'll bring up the appropriate people, and then that's when we'll engage in a discussion. So Ms. Barclay, if you could read item 16, and Mr. City Clerk, don't let me forget item 15.
Never, sir.
Because I have senior moments. Okay? Very senior moments. Ms. Barclay.
Item 16 is a motion, Perry Garcetti Smith, relative to the CRA allocating $2.8 million in general revenue from ground rents at Cal Plaza to the Museum of Contemporary Art for operational costs.
Okay. Mr. Williams, you're double dipping today. Please come forward. Mr. Williams on item 16. And then Ann Nguyen. Good morning again.
Good morning. My name is Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, CD 14. Well, I learn well from CRA. The whole concept of CRA was to do capital improvements so that it would increase the value of the surrounding lands and the properties thereof, and thereby generate more revenue for CRA. We have seen continuing use of CRA funds well beyond the areas that need it as the blight surrounding many of the CRA projects. In CD 14, we have the Adelante. Adelante northern area lies within the LA 32 Neighborhood Council. We have had one presentation by CRA, and that was only after we were criticizing them for a long time. The CRA does not participate with most of the neighborhood councils because they know that they have no power. Most of your items never have a community impact statement prepared by the neighborhood councils. The Adelante was sponsoring a 24-unit development on Huntington Drive, over a mile away from the Adelante, while Monterey Hills supplies Boyle Heights, 2 miles, almost 3 miles away. How are the funds of CRA used within our neighborhoods? Because we asked the CRA representative in the neighborhood council, hey, how much money do you get from our area? They couldn't say it. They said it can't be separated. That's bullshit.
What?
That's not a good thing.
Okay. Because now we
I'm sorry, I come from Berkeley. I was there 1965 through 72.
We have a good time here, but you stepped over the line. Don't do that.
Okay. It portrays the problems in the neighborhood council. Here you have an operation agreement, strictly, and the CRA monies are needed for housing, not for operations. Thank you.
And let's see, where Where is the sergeant? Could we go to the men's room, get a little bar of soap, and take Mr. Williams with you? And we're going to allow you to speak, but no profanity.
No profanity. Ann Newen with the Central City Association. We are 100% in support of the $2.8 million allocation to Mocha for its operational costs. We all know that the museum is in a difficult financial situation and is at risk of closing. It needs the collective support of Los Angeles to remain open and to maintain its operations. Although many residents, businesses, and civic leaders and artists support the museum, the recession unfortunately has had a chilling effect on charitable giving. This is an institution in downtown Los Angeles and one of the city's most valuable cultural assets. We urge you to approve CRA assistance immediately to keep it afloat. Thank you.
Thank you. Donald Cosgrove and William Norris, please come forward.
Mr. Chair, as they're coming forward, come on up. As they're coming forward, Mr. Cosgrove and Judge Norris are the founding fathers, for lack of a better term, of the museum. And I would like for them to speak now because you're the chair. But I would like to ask you if after the agency presentation and after I make my comments, if there is a need for additional information for them to put on the record, that you consider letting them come back up to the table.
That would be fine.
All right.
That would be fine. Welcome, and thank you for all your service.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Donald Cosgrove, and I reside at 121 South Hope Street, the promenade right up the hill. I am now retired, but in the late 1970s, I was the associate administrator of the CRA, and at that time, we were preparing the RFP for the development of the last uncommitted acreage on Bunker Hill, and that is the project that became California Plaza. And one of the requirements of that RFP is that 1.5 acres would be set aside for public open space, and that public open space would be proximate to cultural or to entertainment of facilities. And as the process went forward, it became clear that the cultural facility that which would meet that requirement of the RFP came to be Mocha. And it was felt that having that kind of cultural facility as a part of the project would help the total economic viability of the project, and it would attract people from all over the city to that facility, and that kind of population would help the economic viability of the project. And so from the very beginning, the importance of having a strong cultural facility as one of the major components of that entire project was a major public goal. So therefore, it seems to me at this time that it would be entirely appropriate for the public to provide financial assistance to the continued viability of that museum.
Thank you. Judge?
My name is Bill Norris.
Can I ask you a question? I could be wrong.
Decline to my time or yours?
No, this is my time. In this committee, we afford judges, former judges all the time they need, and also people of the clergy, people, so we're smart here. Did you have anything to do with the Indian compacts in the state? Or
yes.
That's where okay.
I was the governor's special counsel.
I thought so. Anyway, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir. Anyway,
be his negotiator of those.
I remember Mr. Cardenas and I
survived that process.
We all did.
Barely.
Mr. Cardenas and I were there when you did the negotiations on that. Anyway, now go right ahead, sir.
Picking up on where Don Cosgrove left off, in 1979, Mayor Tom Bradley formed an advisory committee on a museum of modern art in the city of Los Angeles. He asked me to chair that committee, which I did. That committee led to a negotiation with the Community Redevelopment Agency, and the result was that the result of that agreement, which included the developer, of course, was that the developer would be required to use the 1.5 or 1% for public art for a home for art. And so that money and that money alone was used to build what is now the museum. I have always looked on this as not strictly a private venture, although it's now governed by a board of private citizens, and most of the and practically all the money comes from the private sector now. But without the $20 million that was controlled by the city of Los Angeles through the Community Redevelopment Agency, there would be no Mocha today. And I recall well that Mayor Bradley and the CRA leadership, Don Cosgrove played an important role, that it was felt that, was hoped that Mocha would succeed as a viable cultural institution. It has done that beyond anything I could have imagined at the time. Incidentally, I've had no involvement with the museum as a board member or any other way other than be a member and to make a modest contribution on an annual basis. And but the success of Mocha is worldwide and world known. This is, to me, as the founding president, I'm very proud of that. I have always felt that Mocha has upheld its side of the bargain. And it was not anticipated at that time that we would have problems with the operating money. We were required by Mayor Tom and the CRA to raise an initial operating endowment of $10 million, which we did. Starting with nothing was rather remarkable. And in any event, in terms of programming, including outreach programs for children and in this city, Mocha has an unbelievable reputation, not only throughout this country, but worldwide, and has managed to put together a collection which is second to none anywhere. And so all I can say is Mocha, I really truly believe, has contributed in a major way to the enhancing the value of the property at California Plaza and the surrounding areas. And I think that the city should, what I believe as a result of this early history is that this was a joint venture between the city of Los Angeles and the private sector. And I think that in every way, except just recently, they've had a little operating fund problem, as many other nonprofit institutions have had recently. And I think it would be appropriate, at least I feel this way, and I have a strong belief, that the money generated in part by the presence of Mocha at this particular location and the success of Mocha has really contributed to the revenue stream that is derived from the Cal Plaza project.
Thank you, Judge, and it was good for me. I could put a face with a name now. Okay, so it's good to see you. We have, I think, one more card from the public. Danielle Brazell. Please come forward.
My drama teacher
Good morning.
told me to get rid of my gum before I speak to anybody.
She should
Trying
have
to
told
do
you to
that.
bring gum for everybody,
I know,
the whole
well-
class.
Sorry, everybody. Hi, my name is Danielle Brazell. I am the Executive Director of Arts for LA. I live in Councilman LaBonge's district in CD4, and I work in Jan Perry's district in CD9. I'm also a proud member of Mocha. Arts for LA is a 501c3 arts advocacy organization, and our objective is to foster a healthy environment in which the arts and culture may thrive and be accessible to all in our region. We're not taking a position on this particular motion, but it's kind of a slippery slope. We advocate for increased support for arts, and this is fantastic. More money for the arts is great. But we also want to make sure there's an equitable distribution and strong public policy behind any distribution. So again, more funding is fantastic. Mocha, an incredible organization. They do great work. The current grants budget for the Department of Cultural Affairs is just 78 cents per resident, not including visitors. And the current economic crisis is having a devastating impact on arts organizations, community groups throughout our city. We're also taking major hits. Little things like the fee waiver for festivals, huge impact for a small arts organization or community festival. LAUSD just froze its district funds, so its ACPN network completely stopped hiring arts organizations to do arts education. This is over $1.5 million that arts organizations are having hit. So again, more money for the arts is great. But what policy, what public policy and what precedent does this policy set if CRA funds are going to be used for general operating? What is the city's role in helping other arts organizations deal with the financial crisis? And one last comment, you may be aware that there's a $50 million, there's a major stimulus package happening at the federal level. $50 million is proposed for arts through the National Endowment for the Arts. So there may be some relief coming at the federal level, but I would inquire and support how the city may shore that up locally as well. These are unprecedented financial times. There are no easy answers. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And where it relates to the 50 million, don't bank it until you see it.
Exactly. But you know, you might want to let your lobbyists know.
It's a little too early for that.
Exactly.
Anyway, we've been joined by
Thank you.
Council President Garcetti. Thank you very much. At this time, if we could have the CRA folk come forward. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you. We've just passed out to you a written report that's I'm going to just quickly summarize it to give you what we've been able to find out. We appreciate the opportunity to respond to the motion. We want to talk about some of the legal impediments to part of the motion. We want to describe the fiscal impacts, propose some alternative solutions to try to address the underlying desire to support Mocha. Because as you've heard from the fathers of Mocha, CRA has an abiding interest in the continued survival of Mocha. We're why Mocha exists. We believe it's the crown jewel of Bunker Hill. We want to see it return to a viable fiscal condition. So first of all, it might help to provide a little bit more background. When we entered into a 99-year ground lease with Mocha, they were allowed to use it for basically $1 a year. And the right to use the building was worth about $16 million in 1980. And in return, Mocha agreed to continue to use, operate, and maintain the site as a nonprofit museum of contemporary art of world-class stature, which they certainly have achieved, with the concern for the general public. And at the expiration or earlier termination of the lease, Mocha is supposed to return the building to CRA to compensate the landlord for the benefits given up by landlord in order to have the museum built, and that's what's in the lease now. So as long as Mocha is not in default of the lease, they can continue to use it essentially rent-free for $1 a year. By any measure, the cumulative value of the subsidy that the CRA and the City of Los Angeles through the CRA has provided to Mocha runs into many, many millions of dollars. One way you might calculate the current value of that subsidy is to refer to the liquidated damages provision in the lease, and it's summarized in here, but it basically amounts to if there's a default, for some reason Mocha does not meet its end of the bargain, they would be required to make monthly rental payments of about $150,000, increased by 5% on each anniversary date. So today, that subsidy comes out to about $440,000 a month, or an annual subsidy of over $5 million per year. We think it's a subsidy well worth investing. It's a world-class institution, but it is important to remember that this is an institution that is an anchor on Bunker Hill and is also an anchor in Little Tokyo. So when we were reading these reports in the press about the deteriorating fiscal condition of Mocha, we were very alarmed at CRA, not only because it's an anchor in Bunker Hill, but because the Mocha Contemporary Art Museum in Little Tokyo is really an important anchor for us in the art park vision that we've had for many years to create. So just as we've been really worried about the shutdown of the Mocha Contemporary, Geffen Contemporary space as well. So that is, for that reason, we're delighted to be able to work with Mocha, the new leadership on Mocha, to come up with a fiscal recovery plan that'll work. So that said, let's talk a little about the legal constraints on providing operational support. There's nothing in the California Community Redevelopment Law that authorizes the use of redevelopment funds to pay for the operating costs of a museum or any other non-housing provider. The Community Redevelopment Agency permits a redevelopment agency to spend its funds for redevelopment purposes, and they're enumerated in Health and Safety Code Section 33,000, continued. So things like land acquisition, related expenses, planning, other costs and expenses related to rehabilitation or development of property within redevelopment project areas is permitted. The fact that the funds are general revenue does not eliminate that limitation. It still has to be an allowable redevelopment purpose enumerated in the law. And we have a recent opinion of the State Attorney General that general revenue received by a redevelopment agency may be spent in any redevelopment project area, but it still has to be used for a redevelopment purpose. So that's the limitation. We can't use it for operating costs. We're in the business of essentially bricks and mortar and planning. So that's the constraint, and we have some ideas about how we can be of assistance, and there's been a lot of ideas thrown out there in the media that we want to talk about. Okay, so let's assume we can find a way to find an allowable use for funds, and we want to talk about that as well. One of the key issues is what this would do on the operating expenses at CRA. If we allocate $2.8 million in general revenue for Mocha for operational costs in next fiscal year, 09-10, the operations in CRA's South Los Angeles and Harbor regions would have to be significantly reduced and restricted. And let me explain why. Each year, project areas in South LA and the Harbor receive subsidies from the CRA, and this has been going on for a number of years now to sustain their operations. In the current year, that subsidy has been about $7 million, and we don't expect it to go down. We think it's going to be the same amount next year, which is $7 million. We basically have two very reliable sources of general revenue. One is ground leases, of which Cal Plaza is a significant one, but there are others, and that's about $3 million. And then our interest earnings on our deposits, which is about $4 million. That's been going down as interest rates have decreased, so it's down to $4 million this year. So that's about $7 million of reliable sources of general revenue. We have other sources of general revenue. One is repayment from project areas who have borrowed general revenue and now have the resources to pay. This occurs a lot of times when project areas are able to issue bonds. So here's the problem. We're not anticipating issuing any debt this year or next year because of the capital markets. There is no market for CRLA taxable bonds right now, and only an extremely restricted market for tax-exempt bonds, which is why we've seen our work program dramatically diminish next year, because we just can't issue debt. The capital markets are a mess right now. So for next year, because we don't have anybody issuing debt and repaying what they owe to general revenue, we're really down to $7 million. About $3 million, which comes from the Bunker Hill ground leases, and $4 million, which comes from the interest earnings on our deposits, which, as I say, are probably going to go down even more because interest rates are now down to about 1%. So the full $7 million we anticipate is going to be needed to subsidize the operations of what the harbor and the South LA offices are doing now. So if we took out $2.8 million to provide operating support for Mocha, which we think legally we're not able to do, but let's say $2.8 million for something we could spend it on, it's going to have a substantial impact on those two regions, and they're going to need to reduce their operations in a corresponding amount. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Mocha's pending financial recovery plan. Ms. Perry was generous enough to put together a meeting with some of Mocha's trustees and the CRA and the mayor's office to talk about kind of their recovery plan. And we understood from that meeting that Mocha's new CEO, Charles Young, a special advisory committee, and certain members of the Mocha's Board of Trustees were going to be putting together a financial recovery plan, and that they would be issued in about 30 days. And I think we're about 2 weeks away from that. We understand that this plan is going to outline how they intend to get to financial recovery, stabilize where they are, take advantage of the $15 million road infusion of cash, and just really give us a plan. Without that plan, it's very difficult for us to analyze for you how we could spend this money. What's the best way to ensure that the city's $2.8 million or whatever investment amount you intend to make is used in an effective manner for a sustained recovery of Mocha. We would recommend, though, that when that recovery plan comes out, and we hope it's public, that's the other thing we would like to recommend, is that that recovery plan, that the CAO, the CLA, Cultural Affairs, and CRA have an opportunity to review that recovery plan with Mocha's Board of Trustees and kind of really go through it and understand how we can be of assistance as a public agency. We think whenever that plan comes out, we need to then underwrite whatever assistance they're proposing that we invest in. However they intend to use our investment, that we underwrite that investment as we would any other investment that comes to us. Any other proposal to spend our money, we run through an underwriting process. We'd like to do the same with Mocha's proposal. But again, we await it. We don't know what it is, and we look forward to seeing it. Okay, so we're trying to anticipate what it might be. Here's some alternatives. If we can't pay for operations of a museum because redevelopment law does not allow us to do it, what can we pay for? We can pay for bricks and mortar. That's the appropriate use of redevelopment funds. So we've heard in the press that Mocha might want to build its capacity by maybe weatherizing the Geffen Contemporary. That's a terrific use of funds, and we would support it. But it has to be part of an overall plan to bring Mocha into financial good health. So just to give you a sense, that's one that we think makes a lot of sense. The Geffen Contemporary is a city-owned facility that gets a ground lease to Mocha for $1 a year. It's in the Little Tokyo redevelopment project area. It's really important for the cultural revitalization of that community. So that seems like a really good expenditure if we have a plan on how to do it. Another way we might be able to assist Mocha is through our arts retention program. And we're very pleased that Mocha has responded to a request for qualifications that we issued back in November of last year for the Bunker Hill Art Organization Retention Program. The due date was January 16th. Mocha did submit an application and materials to support their application. We received 7 other responses along with Mocha's. And I'm going to give you a very brief background on our arts retention program. We have Susan Gray from our Cultural Affairs program who can explain it in greater detail. But basically, this is a program we started back in Hollywood in 2006. And based on the success of that project, we have expanded it to North Hollywood, Harbor, Mid-City, and now Bunker Hill. We actually received awards from the James A. Doolittle Leadership and Theater Ovation Award from the LA Stage Alliance. We also received the Hollywood Arts Council's Charlie Award in acknowledgement of the success of this program. So the way it works is we recognize that the work of redevelopment tends to increase property values. That's what we're supposed to be doing. But it then can also make it difficult for arts organizations that are the heart and soul of many of our redevelopment project areas. It makes it difficult for them to continue to operate there. So more and more property owners want to raise the rents on these folks, or they're looking for tenants with greater economic capacity than arts organizations have. So what we've worked on with this program is a way to provide technical assistance to help these arts organizations have a sustained presence in our project area. So we do a facility and organizational needs assessment, we do technical assistance training targeted at retention, and we assist with identifying suitable new spaces and potential funding for capital improvement projects. We've right now got 22 organizations participating in this project through all the project areas that I mentioned, and in our letter we attached a list of them. We're pleased that Mocha has applied for this money, and we look forward to evaluating their application. It may be another way for us to provide support for their efforts. So, a couple more points. We weren't sure from the motion which fiscal year the $2.8 million was intended to be taken from. So as I said, if it's next fiscal year, it will have a direct impact on South LA and the harbor. If it's in the current fiscal year, what it would do is take the existing $2.3 million deficit in the land acquisition fund and increase it to $5.1 million. The land acquisition fund is where we put all of our unallocated general revenue. And we've spent a lot of time in this committee about that. I'm not going to go to a long example. But what we've done in page 5 of our report is give you a list of the land acquisition projects that the council has approved for us to fund. When the council adjusted the revenues going into the land acquisition fund by not having a couple of project areas pay back the general revenue, it left a $2.3 million hole. So if we added took another $2.8 million out of that fund, if it's this fiscal year that's intended, now we'll have a $5.1 million hole. So then the $17.8 million projects, we just need to figure out how to allocate that hole. And that's the impact it would have for this fiscal year. Okay. The good news is there are other funding alternatives available. If we don't take it out of general revenue, there are other places you can take it from that won't have an impact on either the acquisition fund this year or the harbor or South LA next year. Fortunately, because if we could come up with a bricks and mortar improvement plan, there are other funds out there in the downtown area. Bunker Hill, which is where Mocha is located, recently received approximately $1.7 million in tax increment revenues beyond what was budgeted for this year. In addition, they have a balance of about $5 million in uncommitted tax increment funds. So there's about $6.7 million from Bunker Hill alone that could be spent on this. We also project new tax increment revenues of about $5 million from Bunker Hill next year. Again, that can definitely be used for bricks and mortar. Little Tokyo, where the Geffen is located, has a balance of about $3 million in uncommitted tax increment, and they're supposed to get about $1.5 million next year in Little Tokyo. There's also a couple of areas that have borrowed from general revenue in the past that have not repaid, and those are City Center and Central Industrial. If they did repay those funds to general revenue, that would amount to $6 million, which could then be spent on Mocha or other sources without affecting South LA and harbor operations. City Center has a budget of about $56 million. 5.8 of it is uncommitted tax increment. City Central Industrial has a budget of $34 million right now. $7 million of it is uncommitted tax increment. So again, if they were to repay what they owed, that $6 million could go into support Mocha or some other, worthy expenditure, and it wouldn't affect South LA or harbor operations. Just in sum, we really do want to play a part in making sure that Mocha remains an important cultural anchor for downtown Los Angeles. We've made a substantial investment in it. It is a world-class institution. We cannot let it falter. But we think we need to have a transparent plan from the Mocha Board of Trustees on how they intend to get themselves back on firm financial footing and give us some ideas of how they would use our investment. And then we would welcome the opportunity to work with them to make a contribution to get them back on firm footing. And that's our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Perry, we have some visitors.
Yes, I
we have some visitors that came in as we started the presentation. Yes, and it was a lot of visitors. So what I have here is a request from I believe it's the teacher Karos Takinis. Come forward, and we'll have you sit over here. And there was also a request from one of the students, Michael Rizzo. So when now you're going to testify. You're going to testify.
Can I-
That's your, and then I'm going to kick it to you before she starts. Just make yourself comfortable, and you can tell us who we have here.
We have students from Angeles Plaza High School. Thank you. Why don't you guys stand up so everybody knows you're here? And their principal, Judea Radcliffe. Where's the principal? There she is. She looks like a student.
Yeah.
And I want to thank them for coming. Did you guys walk over? Yeah, they walked over, and I appreciate it. The reason that they're here today, and I think they're going to talk about that on the record, is what Mocha has done for educating young people in this city, and they are just an example of that. And then I'll let them. No one can say it better than they can.
Okay, thank you. I got some bad information where related to you, so I think I've been informed that you're not the teacher.
I'm not the teacher.
So
My name is Carol Stakinas.
Okay. So at least I was partly right. But anyway,
Yes.
welcome, and
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak, and I'd also like to thank the report, which I thought included a lot of really important information. My goal here today is to introduce myself. I'm the executive director of LACE, Los Angeles Contemporary Exhibitions.
wait.
And
Could you Carol up? Hold her time. Do we have a symphony? Oh, background music. Sorry, Carol, the music distracted me.
Understood.
Go ahead.
I'm the director of a nonprofit's alternative art space that just celebrated its 30th anniversary. We started downtown in North Broadway through CETA funding. So I am a living testament that this kind of commitment can lead to creative leadership. I do want to ask that the council consider what is before you in looking at the vitality of Mocha as a bigger picture of the Los Angeles creative community. I'd like to see this not only save Mocha, but actually provide a raised platform for greater creative growth for the 900 plus alternative arts organizations that make every dime we get worth about 50 times as much. So I want to thank the good information, but also ask the committee itself to also think about how this money, through things like the Arts Retention Program and other kinds of forms of funding, can not only benefit the excellence of Mocha, but also other arts organizations such as LACE, Grand Performances, the list goes on. But again, thank you for your time, and thank you all for your commitment to the arts.
Now, did you have your notes on the computer?
I did.
Okay. Okay. I think the name was Michael Rizzo. Come forward. Michael, now you're in the hot seat, so. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go on.
All right. There comes a time in life when one has to speak up, even when one is shy.
A little closer to the mic.
All right.
So you don't have to speak up that loud.
There comes a time in life when one has to speak up, even when one is shy. Mocha has been a focal point for our school, Angeles Plaza College Preparatory, located just blocks from Mocha. Their education department has worked with us for 15 years. Our June graduate, Jasmine, worked there all last year because of her knowledge gained from Mocha and her passion for art. She is now attending Pasadena Art Center. All of us use Mocha not only as a learning center, but as a catalyst to inspire us to do greater things. It would be unconscionable to close Mocha. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Ms. Perry, I'm going to afford you the opportunity to begin on this item. Thank you, Michael. You can go back to the safety of the back of the room. Okay.
Very nice.
And I want to thank Principal Radcliffe for bringing the kids, not kids, young people, okay, bringing the young students over today. I really appreciate it. I feel pretty passionate about this because I have seen the direct benefit of the educational programs that Mocha has to offer, and I have read various accounts in the newspapers about Mocha not outreaching and things like that, and I think when people think that, it's because they don't know Mocha. Let me just give you a couple of examples. And I have a deputy on my staff. She's here now, Pamela Huntu. Just raise your hand, Pamela. All Pamela does is link educational opportunities and cultural opportunities to seniors and young people in our district throughout the entire city, and that is my focus, and she implements that. We've had so many groups benefit from Mocha. Seniors from Vermont Square, and I told this story before of a friend of mine who has since passed, who was initially, we bring these seniors in, and Mocha has some pretty provocative exhibits at that all the time, which is good, you know. And I think at one particular time they had nudity in one exhibit, and the seniors came in, yeah, and they were just pretty shocked. But by the end of the day, they were working on projects, and you know, really at the end of the day, Helen said to the group and to the people from Mocha, she was in her late 70s at the time. When I was a young person, I never would have had the opportunity to come into a place like Mocha except to clean it. And she said that this was one of the most exciting and moving experiences that she had ever had, and that she felt really connected because she'd had the chance to be in there. The Baptist Ministers Conference went there the day they had a sculpture made out of Q-tips and the lipstick exhibit. And they were initially confused, but when the docents took them around and explained it, they were again engaged, excited, blown away, didn't know it was there, wanted to bring their members of their congregations back. And so the kids are here today, the countless number of schools that have been there. I can remember the excitement of the Jefferson High School kids who saw the Basquiat exhibit, never knew who Basquiat was, and that he actually started out as a graffiti artist and achieved worldwide renown. I can tell you it's an inspiration to people throughout the city. People, and I don't hold the moral imperative on this, and so I speak plainly with facts. No one has the moral imperative on this issue. The issue is this museum has a long record of being open and welcoming and reaching out to people who are disadvantaged. So I want to say that for the record.
Well, Ms.
Now,
Perry, I still haven't gotten over the 77-year-old woman that was turned on by the nudity. But
okay,
so
well, she wasn't turned on. No,
I'm stuck there.
She embraced it. She embraced it.
Yeah,
She embraced it. So now, as to the specifics, and I do appreciate getting this letter today. This is great, and it gives us a good outline to respond. Couple of things I need to put on the record. The City Council, our colleagues, made a policy decision in December of 2008 that the city center and central industrial redevelopment areas would not pay back the general revenue for 3 years at minimum, based on various policy implications, including the single room occupancy preservation ordinance and the settlement of the Wiggins lawsuit. And I'm going to ask the Chief Legislative Analyst's Office and the CAO to make sure that they report back on that particular point. I want to also raise the issue for the CLA. There have been reports or comments shared with me from my colleagues that have moved from, if we pursue this approach, the South LA offices will have to be shut down, and or we will lose the opportunity to build more affordable housing. And I want to plumb that issue. I would like to explore that issue much more, much deeper, and to really dig into the legal issues and the interrelationship of all that. I think that's very important. General revenue is a unique source of funds and can be spent in a redevelopment area without a regard as to where the funds were generated from. So as long as the expenditures promote the goal and the mission of community redevelopment law as expressed by the California legislature, and the 2009-2010 general revenue allocation from the Cal Plaza rents is unencumbered. So I think that the essence of this discussion is to truly understand the relationship and put it on the public record between the general revenue and the redevelopment agency's land acquisition fund, since there has been a proliferation of discussion, call it what you will, that allocating general revenue generated from Cal Plaza to Mocha that will be taking away funds from South Los Angeles project areas. We must fully explore that discussion or that allegation. In 2007, the redevelopment agency established the Land Acquisition Fund to purchase properties and redevelopment agencies that have limited tax increment funds. The Land Acquisition Fund was established by the City Council, affirming that, as a 2-year pilot program, and the City Council will have to decide if the Land Acquisition Fund is reestablished for the coming fiscal year of 2009 through 2010. The Land Acquisition Fund has received general revenue generated from the rents at Cal Plaza, as well as general revenue from other redevelopment agency investments, such as land sale proceeds. The general revenue generated at Cal Plaza is not the sole funding source for the Land Acquisition Fund. The reestablishment of the Land Acquisition Fund is a separate policy decision that the City Council will have to decide, vote on, and make. However, I want to be extremely clear and state again that the 2009, 2010 ground rents from Cal Plaza are unencumbered. And in my view, this discussion with colleagues and an ultimate vote as to whether or not to allocate it to Mocha should be held and should be conducted on the record. Mocha serves as an anchor tenant of Cal Plaza and generates the street activity, the pedestrian activity, which supports the for-profit retail businesses at Cal Plaza. For many years, Mocha has been sort of the sole entity, even before Colburn, all those businesses that are up there now, and Disney Hall has been holding it together to lift the property values, or at least hold them to where they are, so we could build other cultural institutions. And I think it's appropriate public policy to have this discussion. As the motion, my motion, seconded by my colleague, Mr. Garcetti, goes through this deliberative public legislative process, the council, the city departments, and the public should engage in deliberations to determine if Mocha is to receive these funds. So, Mr. Chair, finally, I would like to say the issues that I've raised, the issues in this letter, comments made by our speakers today, I would like to ask that we keep this item in committee and that the chief legislative analyst work with the redevelopment agency and with Mocha and report back to this committee within 45 days an analysis of Mocha's financials, a copy of the ground lease between Mocha and the redevelopment agency with a chart showing what type of public financial support other art institutions received, and any other necessary information that should be included, including, again, a discussion and an analysis of the assertions that if this moves forward, that it will be taking away funds from South Los Angeles project areas and putting affordable housing at risk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Without objection, that'll be the order. But Mr. Garcetti, did you want to speak?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Reyes? Okay, so.
Thank you. Because of the way that Mocha was set up, I found out, not because Mocha told me, but I think because my predecessor, Councilmember Padilla, told me that council presidents and mayors serve as ex officio members of the Mocha board. And when I came to know about that, I tried to reach out and see before this what sort of increased visibility, outreach, and connection with the community Mocha could have. I mentioned our channels 35 and 36, which could be a pretty low-cost way of branding Mocha and getting the arts community, not just with Mocha, but get out there and connect more with all the cable viewers in the city of Los Angeles, other things which at the time Mocha board and staff did not take me up on. When, a couple of years later we found out about the financial situation, I was not regularly notified of meetings or anything like that, even though I was a member of the board, and I think that was indicative of part of the problems there, is that things were kept very tightly and not given a lot of sunshine. I got very directly involved in these negotiations, both with Mr. Brode's offer to come forward with the money and really to motivate the board to make sure folks that weren't doing their part were no longer serving on the board, and those who were stepping up and doing what we expect out of a board. And was happy to co-introduce this with Ms. Perry in the midst of those negotiations with a very open-ended approach to what these monies may be used for. And ultimately, they're not monies in my own district, so I defer to Ms. Perry, although I wear a half hat with the Mocha Board trustee for the public. And the reason why the City Council President and the Mayor sit on those boards is because we created Mocha, and we have a stake in its success, and we certainly, for me, the negotiating stance that I took was that we would not allow Mocha to be merged with LACMA. LACMA simply is a great organization, would have provided a great comprehensive museum, but I kept using the metaphor, who remembers the last bank that merged with Citibank? You know, we always say mergers are going to be great and everybody's going to be an equal part of it, and yet somehow mergers often subsume the junior partner. And at a time when the art scene in America has shifted westward, and we are the center of contemporary art in America, but the art scene in Los Angeles has shifted eastward, it seems to be at the perfect crossroads of those two currents, to keep from Hollywood to downtown, the east side, some sort of really viable institution. But its failure to connect as vibrantly as we know with the community, as Ms. Perry showed today, whether it's the students that we have here today, whether it's seniors, those moments have been incredible and profound and beautiful, but they're not enough. And Mocha is not the only part of the arts community, which is why I appreciate the rest of the arts community who's here and the efforts that CRA is doing. What we launched in Hollywood, Lace is just a great jewel that if you've not been to, you need to go to on Hollywood Boulevard. And looking at what we can do under our big ships, not to have mainstream and alternative, because I know the term was used about the 900 alternative ones, but to really bring that family together. And where can Mocha not just think about Mocha, but LACMA and Mocha and our large institutions be catalysts for the smaller ones? How can we use that branding and our communication tools like our channels and stuff like that to publicize what's opening and what's going on? We have very vibrant art blogs that do that, but there's no connection with a lot of people. If you're not on the art blogs, you don't know about it, and you're not finding out about it. And it's very expensive for folks to do old media kind of communication or to do paid media, which few galleries and institutions have money for. So mindful of what redevelopment law is, I mean, the thing that I love about Hollywood and the art retention program is it's local tax dollars being kept locally. So where we can do that, and where this money's on the table, I was very clear with Mocha before anybody, writes or has the impression that we promised $2.8 million for something specific. This is public money, but it has to. This is the public process, so I'm glad we're doing that. And I said don't count on that 2.8, but I think that when Ms. Perry identified that, that's money that's in play if we can do it in the proper ways and in ways, bottom line, that expands the audience as well. And it's very worrying that the mismanagement has led to the 6-month closure of the Geffen, because in some ways, while we're awaiting Grand Avenue to pop as a residential area, Little Tokyo has been that for years, and more so is going to be that as the Gold Line opens a stop right there. And if we somehow see that as the stepson of the institution, and we don't get that, we may starve the entire family, if you will, of Mocha. So with those conditions and sitting down with Mocha in an open mind and an open process, I look forward to us figuring out how that best can be used to achieve those aims.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Reyes.
My comments are real basic. I would hope that in this dialogue, in these 45 days, we include the plan from Charles Young and how they are going to look at this challenge and essentially isolate where our best leveraging potential within the path of least resistance, given all the potential legal concerns that were raised this morning. And I think we all want to be able to continue serving our youth and provide the arts, and I think we're all saying that. I think the question here is the approach and the methodology in which gets us to that goal. I also want to hopefully have within these 45 days a basic discussion of how does this council and how do my colleagues look at what are highest priorities for the use of scarce funds, and how does that support the goals of our respective council members, especially with the challenge we have in Mocha, making sure it stays open. So I'm looking forward to that dialogue. Appreciate that.
Ms. Perry.
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. I think I'm the last speaker. I think this is an exciting discussion. I think the fact that it is being held on the public record is also extremely exciting. I look forward to my colleagues' opinions and getting their input, and I appreciate Mr. Garcetti and Mr. Reyes's comments. And I think it is important to understand and not muddy the waters, and to make sure that we clarify again for the record the assertion that Mocha would take away funds from South Los Angeles project areas. Again, no one has the moral imperative on this. I think this is going to be a full-bodied, participatory analysis, which I look forward to, and I think that's the best part about being a council person, is to be able to put these things on the record and allow all stakeholders to participate. So thank you very much.
Fine.
Great.
Okay, so without objection, we'll hold this in committee, and within 45 days, there'll be a report back.
Thanks, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Item 15. Okay. Item 15.
Item 15, yes. It's a report from the city attorney and an ordinance relative to special election for the City of Los Angeles Community Taxing District Number 2.
Okay, seeing it there, no comment cards on this item. Without objection, we'll adopt the city attorney's report, draft ordinance. Ms. Barclay, is there any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
Okay, then this committee is adjourned, so let it be written, so let it be done. Huh?
I didn't hear you call for the meeting first time. Sorry about that.
Maybe I didn't. Maybe you didn't hear it because